Hello, bonjour, Aanii, from Sault Ste. Marie to Sioux Lookout, from Manitoulin to Moose Factory. Welcome back to Connecting the North with Fringe North. My name is Garrett Ryan, and I am the host of this program. Today, we are joined by the wonderful Skye Smith, actor, writer. How would you describe yourself? I think you are involved in a lot of different areas. General artist. I'm going to let you describe yourself because I feel like you're all over the place.
Yeah, I would say that has been a great thing of mine for my whole life. I would say artist. I have written, I have directed, I have choreographed, danced, acted. Yeah, lots, all encompassing, I guess.
Best way. I think, and I've found that with some of the other guests on the podcast as well. It's very hard to describe exactly what we are because the areas we work sort of necessitate doing everything. So
yes,
right,
yes,
we're all artists. We're all doing art. That's it.
Well, the show must go on. So however it must go on, you just fill in as needed, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we all find ourselves doing all sorts of things we never expected that we would ever undertake. But
absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of which, I know we have, for anyone listening or watching right now, we have done a podcast prior during the festival season. So I know we have already talked about your work. But for those who didn't see that podcast, which I would encourage people to go back, I thought we had a great conversation then as well. It was a lot of fun. But for those who didn't see it, maybe talk a little bit about some of the work that you do.
Absolutely. So last time on the podcast, we talked about the piece I was working on at the time for Stories Steeped in Stone that was also performed in Fringe North 2022. So that was Lenona Equi and the Steelworker's Wife, which I'm very proud of. Wonderful piece that I produced, wrote, starred in, directed. It was the first piece that I felt that was very much my own, that came from my experiences and my world, described what it's like to live in Northern Ontario. It was so wonderful and so rewarding that I've been on that path since. So I'm the way I can describe that I like to do and produce my art is that I think of something that I envision it having to be outside of my head. And I see something, maybe it's an issue that I'm having, something that I'm struggling with my mental health, with society, something that I need other people to see. So what I've got 3 ideas in my brain right now that I thought, okay, these have to be, I have to put them out on paper and I have to get them out to perform. So that's how I've been chasing my art, I guess, for the last little bit. And it took me this year to really shift other things that I was doing, and I was and focusing more on what I wanted to do. So that's why I decided to perform again, as opposed to teaching and opposed to being in plays or being in somebody else's vision for it. I wanted to do my vision for the next little bit. So yeah, that's what I've been doing lately.
That's great. And your work you did at Fringe North last season was so special. It was so great to be able to see that. I love the position I have at Fringe North, being able to see the work with the artist a little bit, see the work develop, and then see it come on stage. It was so great. And you had such a I think probably the most expansive set and everything compared to other artists, which is great. It was so cool. You were so creative with everything. I loved seeing all of the stuff being loaded in and the different creative ways you made some of these things. Was that because I remember when we talked prior to the show, I think when you did it for Story Steeped in Stone, did you have like it was a different set, right? And then
There was one piece that was different, so I learned a lot in this show. In what I want to do from now on is have maybe less of a set.
right, right, right.
This piece certainly needed it, and I needed to create that space. I needed to create a kitchen, and it worked for both pieces. So I had in Story Steeped in Stone, I had a real stove that I borrowed from Sioux Theatre Workshop from their warehouse that was very 1950s. So I wanted that piece. It's just so important.
Yeah.
And then I decided for Fringe North that I wasn't going to lug a real
Yeah.
1950s gas stove to the museum. So I had a wonderful friend of mine, Cheryl, make a stove for me out of a cardboard box that really it was representational. It worked perfectly, and I do hope to use it again because it's such a nice.
Hmm.
It's a piece of artwork. The way she used things, she used a coffee Folgers coffee lid as the burners
Yeah, yeah,
on
yeah.
the cardboard box. Oh, she's so creative and so wonderful.
And it looked
So
great. You like
yeah.
there's this perception if you're going from a real stove to a cardboard version that it'll be like somewhat of a not a downgrade, but it'll have a different effect. Which I didn't see the original performance, but it totally felt when that set was there that we were in that intimate kitchen environment. I wasn't taken out of the reality by the stove not being a like actual stove. It looked
And I
fantastic.
think,
It was great.
thank you. I think that is, as an artist and as a performer, you really have to believe it yourself in order for the audience to believe it. So I had to go to the stove as though it was a real stove, right? I could have shifted it. I could have, if it had moved, it would have been clear that it was a little bit wobbly or, it wasn't sturdy. It really, I had to believe in order for, because it took me a while to come to that realization that I needed to change some pieces. And with my new show that I want to do, it's a very clear stage. There's not a whole lot. I realize that I have to do the work to create the space as opposed to, but the way that the pieces are, I don't need a set. I had thought about it a little bit and
Yeah.
something that I wanted, but I won't need it at all.
I'm the same way. I having come up in very low budget, not for profit type theater, I've gotten used to creating the illusion of having more of a space with a relatively empty stage. It's kind of a necessary thing, but I love when you can get a set like you had onto the stage. It's such a different experience, but I think it can be effective in a different way to have a pretty empty space as well. The kind of
Mm-hmm.
absence of space the audience has to work their imagination a little bit more, so it's a different effect, but it's it can be equally powerful for sure.
Yeah. And it puts more pressure on the artist when there's a set because I did the set design, right? That's how I wanted it and I needed it the way it was for choreography and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I used a pot on the stove and my scene was set in 1950s and my husband had mentioned that when he saw it in Fringe, there was a woman beside him that said, "Oh, that pot, that's not the right pot," and so then I thought, oh, of course it's not the right pot. It's not, it doesn't look 1950, it doesn't look well used. It looks new. It looks like an IKEA pot. So I felt like those attention to details are so, so important when you're doing something like that. So if you have nothing, well, you know, nobody can say, well, that wasn't right, or, so
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was it like creating work that comes from such a specific place in a specific time, especially when there are people like you mentioned in the audience that are going to have strong connections to what they're seeing on stage? What did that responsibility feel like to you?
It was easy in the sense that I had a lot of support around me of people that I could speak to and talk to that knew exactly what I was trying to portray. So I would ask my mom countless times, either in person or on the phone, like, "Mom, do you think I should have a dishcloth? Do you think I should have some flowers? Would Nona have put, her spoon down on the stove, or would she have put it in a drawer? Would she, how would she have played out these things. And so I really had to think about um, the character. And there was really specific things that my Nona did that maybe other Nonas didn't do, so I couldn't go too narrow focused
Yeah.
in that character. I wanted it to be to many people relate, and I think they did. So it was, and that's why I say it was easy. It wasn't like I didn't have to put in the work. It was just like I know exactly what to do to get these answers and how I'm doing it. And I
Mhm.
had really great advice from Wendy Hamilton when I was writing The Steelworker's Wife. She mentioned to have a point in time that you want to work around or some sort of big event. So for The Steelworker's Wife, I chose that when the union came in, and that was 1953, I believe. So all of the stories kind of went around when the union was established and when they decided to have a 9 to 5 workday and that you would be paid overtime. So I used that in the script throughout, kind of just, and it organically worked, and that all the stories could find each other and connect
Mhm.
that way too. So I had really great support. I'd say I just had people willing to share their ideas and help me with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that came through absolutely. I something that I really believe in is the principle of finding the universal in this specific when you're creating work, and I think you did a really good job of that. Like, I have no connection to the Italian side of things, but as someone who's from Northern Ontario, from a blue collar family, like I could easily connect to the themes that you're working with. So on that, I wonder if do you sort of view yourself as creating a specific kind of Northern Ontarian art? Like, do you view yourself
Mm.
working within like a distinct kind of art form that you think resonates with people in the North more than people outside of the region? Um,
Yes.
yeah,
And because I've come to a place where I know that my art is for me, solely for me. It's so selfish. It's a part of my self-care, it's a part of my mental health. I need my art to be me, and and only me. So it means not working for other people, which is really hard. It means that I've made choices and set boundaries in my life where I can do this. I'm really, really lucky to be able to do this too, and put my time and my effort into it, because I'm a stay-at-home mom. And this, being an artist in Northern Ontario is can be very hard. Can be, you tend to get
yep.
small gigs here and there that don't really contribute to creating a stable life,
Mhm.
right? So I'm lucky that that I can do that way. So I wouldn't say that I specifically want to show people what Northern Ontario is like, but because I have lived here my whole life, it's going to be evident in all of in everything that I produce.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so have you ever worked outside of Sault Ste. Marie doing art? Because that's great, and I think because some of the people I interview have you know left and gone to some different places and then ended up back, or had the experience working in different areas. Um, and I think it's a really great perspective to talk to someone that was solely shaped by the region. I think that's fantastic.
Cool.
So yeah, I was
Yeah, go ahead.
just to add on to that. With that, what have you noticed since coming up as an emerging artist until now? Like, what changes have you seen in the Sioux as a creator, as someone heavily involved in the arts?
Um, so when I was younger, when I was first realizing that I needed to do the performance arts, I was young. I was 18, and I
Yeah.
started to take classes, different classes in that what I thought I needed to be was which was a triple threat. I knew I wanted to sing, act, and dance, and have those three skills in order to, be better chosen for things and that kind of stuff. but I had a lot of influencers, older people in my life telling me, you got to try to make it. You got to go somewhere else. You got to go to Toronto. You got to audition for this. You got to go here. You got to move. And so there was a few times in my life where I wanted to, and
Mhm.
I planned it. I thought I'm going to move to Toronto. I took a course in Vancouver. It was a summer intensive course that was in film, and I thought I wanted to go to film school, and it wasn't the right time for me for that either. And so there, I had opportunities
Mhm.
in that I thought I would go. I didn't get into theater school when I was applying when I was in grade 12. I
Okay.
applied to one school, didn't get in. That's my own fault, right? But so I had opportunities to go, and I didn't go, and I realized that I really wanted to stay home. I wanted to meet somebody, have a family, and I wanted the support of my family around while I did that. And that was it was I don't say I was I don't I won't say I was conscious of that, but I think I always wanted that, and I wanted to stay
Yeah.
here. And I watched a movie when I was in my mid 20s called Orange County.
Okay.
If you've seen that, it's Tom Hanks' son.
I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar with
I'm
it.
familiar with it. The whole premise and kind of the message of it at the end is that he's a writer, and that everybody is trying to convince him to go to this. Well, he's convincing himself to go to this one school. If you want to be a writer, you have to go to this one university, become a writer from there. And he doesn't get in. And he, at the end of the movie, continues to write, and he says he stays in Orange County, and he says, I can do this from here. Why can't I write where I am? Why do I have to go somewhere else? Why does it have to be this stepping stone? It will always be a part of my life. So I really connected with that. It was not the story that you're usually told of artists being in this small town, feeling really isolated. They leave and they become themselves, they flourish that way. So I connected with that story, and that I always felt like that I wanted to stay in the Sioux, and I just didn't know how to do it yet. So yeah.
I think that's great. I think that's a very important message that, you know, the idea of having a successful career in the arts, whatever that means, is so
Yeah.
relative. And going to, like, moving to somewhere like Toronto, it does not, like, that doesn't uh, define what is a you know successful career in the arts. I wish there was a better word. Maybe a fulfilling career in the arts is not defined geographically. Um, and I think we need that's something that's really important to me as someone who's very involved in the northern arts. Is we need to share that message more, that people don't necessarily have to go away, or um, you know they don't have to find success elsewhere. There's plenty of amazing opportunities in the North that are equally fulfilling as an artist. And I would say there are potentially even more opportunities now that I'm noticing pop up for Northern artists, at least proportionally, versus coming up to Toronto, where there's so much competition and so many things going on, and it's just like it's kind of diluted. Whereas in the north, there's a lot of really amazing people um, working to make art happen, and if you are there and involved in those communities, I think it feels to me like a lot stronger of a core group of people trying to make art happen. From what I've noticed, at least in my experience, because I'm in both worlds. I do work in Toronto and I do work in the north, and I find the northern community, like, once you're in there in the community making art, you're gonna be busy. You're gonna have a lot of amazing relationships with people, um,
Amen.
and you're surrounded by so many passionate people who just, like, deeply care about the the art in and of itself, rather than any kind of abstract ideas of success and commercial appeal and things like that. So it's a really pure version of the art that I found. in the north.
Oh, wow. Because people do it because they love it. And it
Exactly.
took me a really long time to realize that too, that
Exactly.
I couldn't put a monetary value on what I needed to do. Um, I did make a promise to myself that a few years ago that I wouldn't do anything that was for exposure,
Mhm.
which is what I find um, a lot of I just hate that term.
For
Just
sure.
hate that term. So, and going back to what you said, like how has it changed? I felt in my early 20s as though I had done everything that I could that was a paid gig in Sault Ste. Marie, right? I had, and what I've come to realize is that you kind of have to make that so,
Yeah,
make it so that you're, um, whether it's writing grants or whether
for
it's
sure.
it's accessing people that have grants and that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think the people like yourself that have made a commitment to either the community or the region at large, to stay there and be producing art. Like I said, they're in it for the art, um, and now we just need to expand a little bit on some of the infrastructure and make sure all of these incredible people are getting paid for what they're doing enough to support themselves and keep doing it. So that's the next step, I think, in the evolution of the region for me is like we have all these amazing people and now we just need to keep building on this infrastructure. And I think a part of that comes with connecting some of the cities that are going to be stronger working together versus in our little isolated pockets, which is a big focus of what we're doing with this podcast, trying to build those bridges.
What a cool perspective you have of seeing both sides.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I find myself a lot more drawn into the northern communities just because I see that passion so much stronger. There are fantastic people working down south too, but it's a different kind of love that I see in the north. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. Um, so, what do you think that, from your perspective, the is the next step for the Sioux? And like, what would you like to see for emerging artists in the community that we
More
didn't
rehearsal
get to
space.
talk? Yeah, more
More
rehearsal
rehearsal
space.
space.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen people trying. I've been on boards where people are trying to find different spaces, and there's really wonderful businesses in the Sioux that offer up space, but that's always a struggle with any play that I've been in is to find the space to use it, is to find the space to create your art. So um, some sort of place, and Marnie Stone has done something really, really cool downtown with visual artists, and she's created the artist space. Um, is it the artist hub? I'm trying to think of what the title is. So what she has created is different rooms for artists to rent and use to create their art.
Mhm.
She sells everything downstairs. And when she told me about this idea, I said, "Oh, is it for performing arts too?" She said, "No, it's for visual artists." And I thought about what a cool thing that would be to have a space um, where artists could go and just rent or figure out how to so yeah, that's what I think the next step is to have space to do it.
I totally agree. I think that is a long term or maybe short term, I guess, depending what we're able to accomplish. But goal of Fringe North is to have a dedicated space where we can facilitate that. I think
Yay!
fantastic. So I think we share your kind of frustration at the lack of spaces in the city. So that's something that we're very aware of as well. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's it's important. It's if we have nowhere to rehearse or perform, then the art's not going to get made. That's like very necessary step into getting more work produced, for sure.
Yes, for sure. And I find myself, there was one day I had the urge to create and to choreograph. So I moved my whole table in my kitchen. You know, it was one of those spur of the moment things. I woke up like, I gotta do this. I gotta create this today. Moved my table, had, you know, my son's little couch where I could do this somersault roll that I was working on. And I had to make it work. So but if I had an easier space to go to and create, like, oh my, that would be lovely, lovely. And for a long time, I was, you know, I was in a job that I had a space, and I knew that it would be easy for me to use that space and go there, but I'm not connected there anymore. So, you know, um, when this happens, Garrett, you tell me, and I'll be I'll
Yeah,
be there to help. Yeah.
that's a
Hmm.
goal for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've done the classic rehearsing in spaces that are not meant for rehearsal for sure. That's my whole um, beginnings of working as an artist was rehearsing in my basement or like finding a park and doing runs at the shows and things like that. That's what you got to do. But like at the same time, maybe we shouldn't have to do that. Maybe we should have a space for emerging artists to be able to use, because that exists in Toronto 100%. There are some great spaces that are really low cost and meant for young independent artists.
Oh.
To take that model and put it in Sault Ste. Marie and in other places in the north would be amazing, because it's awesome to have that have access to that in Toronto. But yeah, we
Hmm.
need something like that for sure. Great. So you were talking a little bit about some work that you have coming up, or some projects that you're working on now. I want to talk a little bit about what are your sort of artistic obsessions right now. What are some uh, themes, some ideas that you find yourself really wrestling with in your projects now, and has that shifted since your last work that you had at Fringe North?
Yes. Lanone Kui and the Stoker's Wife was very, very special to me. And somebody asked me, so where are you doing it next? And I thought, I'm putting that to rest
Right.
now. You know, that was a wonderful show.
Hmm.
I had two chances. People had two chances to see it. It's still online if people want to watch it. And I, you know, have great memories of it. But I need to move on and do different things in my life that I kind of have to work through.
Hmm.
So this past summer, I had a revelation about what it means to be a dancer, and what it means to be successful in movement in the movement arts. So I wrestled with all my life, and still do, not having the dancer body type,
Hmm.
and it's always been my struggle, and that I don't trust myself, and I don't trust in my body. So I did a lot of work with figuring out um, that I was meant for this. You know,
Hmm.
it took a really, really long time for me to
Yeah.
realize that. Even though I always am having jobs that kind of fall on my lap that are in some sort of movement.
Hmm.
So that's something that I need other people to see, and I need to express, and I need to show younger dancers how. And it's shifted since I was a young dancer for sure, in how bodies are strong, and how it's not about having the perfect body type, but there's still a lot of work that that community needs to do. So that's one piece that I'm working on, and
Yeah,
it's my own. It's a happy piece, and it's coming to terms with who you are and loving yourself.
that's great.
So there's one.
Mhm.
The other performance piece I want to do is struggling with addiction, and um, my struggles, what I've seen. Um, it's been all around me all my life. So, and I don't know anybody who hasn't. You know, when I do talk to people, if whether they've struggled with something, or they know somebody that struggled with addiction, and how it really is a disease, and there's not much we can do about it except accept it
Yeah.
um, and work through it. So that's another piece that I want to do, where I will be involving other artists in that one, so it's not just me, it's not a solo performance, and I really want to show how it's kind of a devil and an angel on your shoulders that pulls you one way, pulls you another way, pulls you one way, and it will keep pulling you. That story is not a happy one. That one's not a overcome. I think there's more people in my life, and I don't know if it's for most people, that don't go through it, don't get through it, don't even or aren't even aware of it. So that piece I want to show the struggle, the struggle.
Yeah.
The last piece that I'm working on won't be dance. I really want to direct this one because I don't think I'll be able to. It's so close to me, and it would be hard to portray, and I have somebody in mind for it. And it would be a play, and I want to show what I went through and what a lot of women I know that went through having a baby during the pandemic and the isolation that came with that. Becoming a mother, I became a mother before the pandemic happened. I had amazing support. I felt loved. I felt, it was hard for sure, but I felt so much encompassing love around me, and women and men that were in my life, family, friends that were there to help me with that transition.
Mm-hmm.
When I had my second child, it was in the pandemic, and lots of, and not saying that anybody did anything wrong. It's just that it was the way of the world at the time. But I felt really lonely, really,
Yeah.
really lonely. And I was so thankful this was my second, and I wasn't going through it the first time. My husband couldn't come to any of my appointments with me. I know people that had their first child that just missed out on that. They couldn't see the baby's kick on the ultrasound. There was just lots of things that I had one experience that I don't know how to portray it yet, but I was going for lots of walks during the pandemic. It was my way of getting out of the house, of clearing my head, and it just worked for me. And so every once in a while, I would meet somebody for a walk, and that was so lovely. We would mask, whether it was, and before we even knew masks were, going to be helpful. I invited a friend out for a walk, and she has such a good heart. And she said to me, "I can't be around you right now. I don't want to get you sick." And I was devastated. I just really needed to connect with somebody. I needed that friendship, and even though I was feeling her love through text, I really needed to be with somebody that day. And when she canceled, it was more devastating
Yeah.
because of the situations around me. So I need to show that. And the way I imagine it happening is that it's a skit, and that I really need people to show, to see what's happening to the mother through her phone. So whether that's up on a projector behind, but I need people to really be, because that's the only communication that I felt I was having with people. People would drop things off to my doorstep, and I wished that they had stayed. I ran out to somebody one time just to get that connection because they dropped off a present for me, and I just I couldn't let them leave, right? I had to see them. I had to, even though we stayed our 6 feet away, I needed to talk. So that's the third piece that I'm working on. That's so the trouble I guess that I'm having with these three pieces is that I want them all to be separate. They don't really connect yet.
Right.
But yeah, those are the three that I'm.
Very cool. I think there's so much just on the last thing you were saying about portraying the phone communications and the sort of like digital conversations. I've seen some interesting portrayals of of that on stage and in performance, but I think it's still so new, and there's so much untapped potential of using that as a way to further the story. So I'm really interested to see what you end up doing with that. Something that jumps out to me with all three of these projects, which they all sound fantastic, is that while you it reflects what you said about wanting to create work that is deeply resonating with you. But I think all of what you're saying is really it's work that reaches out to other people who might be able to connect in those ways. So I find it really powerful that the work that you do is seems to you have that idea of how you want to affect people and how you want to bring people in with even this kind of conceptualization stages of the work. Like you really want it to be impactful and reach your audience. So I think that's really great. So how have you seen your art or other art have an impact on people? Like what is it, do you think, that motivates you to really want to create art that has this reaching effect?
Because I see, it's funny when you ask that, because I need people to see me. So it's this weird, it's a weird selfish. It's purely for me, in that I want people to see my insides. It's I want people to know me, right? It's like everybody wants to be heard.
Yeah.
So and it's connecting with other people, and if anybody sees themselves in me, that's how relationships are created, and it's how I thrive. So I want to help people. I do want to help any. It's like with the dancer body type. If
Yeah.
I reach one or two young women who are struggling with their body, which I think more people do than not,
Mhm.
with loving themselves, even young men.
Mhm.
If I help somebody, then I'll have done my job, and I'll have done my younger self proud.
Mhm.
So if I think my younger self would say, "Yeah, okay, good. Good. You're doing this. Good, you're doing this for us." Because
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's how I see my work reaching people.
It's fascinating because you have this interesting uh, there's two sides to it. Like it even if it is primarily like quote unquote selfish, in that you just want to create work that allows people to see your thoughts manifested onto the stage. um, it's there's such a selfless quality built into that that's kind of like radiating out. So I think that's so interesting and so impactful about your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Juxtaposition.
Yeah, exactly. It's a
Really
very
fun.
interesting juxtaposition. Yeah, for sure. Um, what advice would you give to a young artist in the Sioux starting out?
Oh, if somebody had said this to me, I wouldn't believe them, because people have always said this. Have confidence.
Mhm.
Have confidence. Have confidence. Have confidence. Um, but that takes time. It just takes time for everyone to realize their abilities and to not give a poop about what other people say.
Yeah.
Admit when you don't know. I think that is such. It took me a really long time to realize that. Instead of pretending, if there's something going on in the room that you don't understand, and you're in a safe place, which sometimes is hard to find, then ask the questions that need to. People aren't out to look at you like you don't know what that is. What do you mean you don't know? So ask questions and say you don't know. I had an experience recently in that where I was working with, I just felt this email chain with people that, nobody said that. Nobody said, I don't know.
Mhm.
And everybody was assuming. So, you know, as the artist, I did the work in figuring out the, what it was. And so nobody else admitted. It was just really, it was hard for me to see that um, in people that I trusted and people that, yeah. So say you don't know, and that you'll figure it out or look into it yourself. It's can be very very powerful. Um,
That's great advice.
yeah, I think that's it. I can't think of anything else because the drive to do it for me has never been hard. So
Yeah.
I could say to people, do 20 minutes a day, do something.
Mhm.
It's so much more organic for me than that. It's not like I can set out a specific time that it needs
I
to be done.
agree.
And my husband and I talk about this a lot too. He's a songwriter,
Okay.
and he said, we tried to figure out with our family, with our, having two young boys, and how to feed this artistic need that we both have. And it's really hard for him to say, I can do this at 8 to 10 p.m. after the boys go to bed on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
He can't. And it's the same with me. Sometimes you get pulled for whatever reason at this exact moment, and so we've been really trying to respect that space for each other,
Mhm.
um, when it comes. So the drive will always be there for you. You don't need to worry about that, and it'll come in waves.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so important as well.
Mhm.
I think it's important to be uh, driven, I guess. Like it's important to put in the work on your art, but it is more or less impossible to rigidly schedule yourself. It's just
Yes,
not how the process works.
for sure. And it's about that discipline, right? Like I trust myself in that I was taught to be disciplined into how to focus right when I need to. But it's so much more organic than just. And I have met artists that are the opposite way,
Mhm.
that set out times and put themselves in that space. But I know myself, and I have such a hard time with that. I used to wait till wee hours of the night, and it does not work for me. My brain just doesn't. It doesn't. It's not creative. It needs to shut down. It needs to start winding down to rest.
Mhm.
So I have better times in the day to do things to set myself up for success, and so that it flows easier, right?
Mhm. So I would like to. It's hard to believe we've already been talking for like over 40 minutes, I think.
Oh wow. So
Yeah,
Garrett, you're so great.
so you're so
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I wish we could just keep talking for a while, but I want to kind of wrap things up with sort of a question that I guess we've kind of touched upon throughout this, but just as kind of a way to sum it all up. Um, with all the cuts and things that are happening in the region, there seems to be um, some great organizations that are growing and growing the art in the north, but then there's all these issues with obviously the Laurentian cuts and schools programs, reducing funding of arts programming. So I'm curious from your perspective of someone who has dedicated yourself to creating in this region. What is the um, value of the art in the north? Like, why? What are we fighting to protect? It's a very loaded question, but I'm take it however you would like to take it.
Hmm. There's so much that I've realized during the pandemic about myself, that what that's a huge issue that I have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
So if I focused on that, my energy would be wasted.
Yeah.
So my goal in my art is what I can do, right? What I can accomplish. So I will find my way. And I had somebody tell me once that I will always be on a path that just doesn't look like anybody else's.
Yeah.
And I think that my energy is better focused on, instead of worrying about that or figuring out, because it's a problem that you can't shoulder yourself.
Mhm.
So I got to do what I love, and I'll just figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
Whether it's for a very small audience in Northern Ontario, right? Um, but yeah, I'm fighting for myself, really. I do my art like I feel like the theme of this is that it's all for me. It's really all for me. I'm doing it because I love it, and I've been driven, and I've set up my life in the way that I can focus on this as, and it's hard to say that it's a side gig or it's a hobby, but um, it's always been a part of my life. I've gone from job to job, communications, I've done marketing, I've done serving, I've worked at a hotel, I've done all these jobs, different things in my life, but um, I've always had performing arts in
Mhm.
my life.
And what does that mean to you then? Narrowing it down, taking it outside of all, like how has the art shaped who you are? That's a very hard question. I totally understand.
How has it shaped me? It's who I am.
Yeah.
It's Everybody has it inside them, and you'll be really surprised. My brother-in-law, we were having a discussion about, he loves, you would never guess it. He's very Northern Ontario in that he loves fishing, he loves going to the gun club, but he has this hobby. He has a cry cut machine, and he makes water bottles and sweaters and t-shirts. And he said to me, Skye, it gets in my head, and I gotta get it out somehow. I gotta get it out somehow. So I get these ideas for making a t-shirt, for putting something on a wine glass or a coffee urn, or
Mhm.
and it's got to come out. And that's me too. That's everybody,
Yeah.
right? Whether your art is in creating things like that, whether it's in knitting, whether it's cooking, and it's in every single person, it's in everybody. So
Yeah.
asking me how it shaped who I am, it's just, I wouldn't, it's like the two, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
For sure.
it's, it's just a part of me, and
Hmm.
I've never been able to suppress it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's a necessary outlet to showing everyone who you are, and like.
Yeah. And so, during the pandemic, when I lost all, I felt like I lost that
Mhm.
so way to self express, and there was different ways I could have. I did some online classes, dance classes. I sent a video of me singing to some friends. It didn't connect the way it does in live performance, and I think that'll always be my love, and that I have to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I truly don't know. um I would feel very like claustrophobic if I didn't have that artistic outlet to share the things that I'm wrestling with. I can't verbalize as myself in the same way that I can when I'm putting words down in a script, or while I'm doing performance. Um, so I think that it has to come from this like somewhat selfish place. But like we said, that has such a it's finding the universal in the specific. It's coming from this place of the self, and then it's having all these amazing effects spreading to people that are connecting with it. And then it just creates this great artist web. And yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for sure. That's it's so hard to describe what is the value of art, but I know that both of us feel it and are passionate about preserving it for sure. Great. So just to wrap up, is there anything that you have coming up anytime soon that you'd like to plug? Any?
Oh, I guess we didn't talk about. So I've been doing some. The past year, I did Taste of Algoma. I did a show. I hosted a show with Buy Algoma Buy Local
Mhm.
to the Sioux St. Marie Innovation Center in Rain, which is up for another year. My proposal was accepted, so I'm doing um, about 10-ish more videos with them for social media that I'll be testing, showcasing local food and local producers in Northern Ontario. So that's been it's so fun. It feels like one of those little dream jobs, dream
Mhm.
gigs that I get to go. One of the things that I did, I went to a bison farm, Grand North Bison.
Okay.
Wonderful people, wonderful experience, and I wrote in the script that the owner would make us dinner, and that we would sit and eat it. So
Yeah.
we all did that together, and it just you know oh yeah. It felt really selfish because I really wanted to eat a delicious bison steak, and that's what he ended up barbecuing for us, and it was so good,
Very cool.
so good. So yeah, that's going on for another year. So Taste of Algoma has got some more another lineup, whole new year of showcasing different local farmers and local
Wow.
producers. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna check that out. I hope other people tuning in check that out as well. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, you can follow. So it'll be on Instagram and Facebook. It's Buy Algoma Buy Local,
Great.
where we share the videos.
Could have got into a whole separate conversation about the artistic qualities of food and food culture, but that'll be for another podcast.
Exactly, exactly. We could go on and on and on.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this, Skye. It's always a pleasure to have you on and have these great conversations. I'm sure we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, I always feel so great after after it.
Hmm.
I'll take this with me. You're my hype man,
Oh,
Garrett. It's great. Yeah.
yeah, I love having these chats with you. It's great, and I'm excited to hopefully do some stuff in person again. It's been
Yes.
whatever 6 months now, which is crazy. It's that flew by, but yeah, Fringe 2023.
Wow. Oh, so exciting.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, very cool. All right, great, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Merci, miigwech, and stay tuned because we will be back with more stories from Northern artists directly to you, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your whatever time of day it is you're listening from.
Bye.